Now, if you go to sustainabledevelopment.un.org, their own document called Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, outlines what they are planning to do. Now, I'm not going to read everything for you. That would just take way too long because this is a pretty long document. But they have some main goals, 17 of them related to sustainable development, and 168 targets, which were announced today, demonstrating the scale and ambition of this new universal agenda. And when you read through this, initially you're going to think, there's nothing wrong with this. These are the tenets that should be placed in order to create a better world. Things like ending poverty and hunger in all their forms and dimensions. Things like protecting the planet from degradation, including sustainable consumption and production, and control of our natural resources to fight against climate change, which is a huge arm of this. Things like prosperity, to ensure human beings can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives that have economic, social, and technological progress occurs in harmony with nature. Now, for those of you paying attention, where have we heard in harmony with nature? That phrase. I think you know what I'm talking about. Peace. We are determined to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, free from fear and violence. Partnership. Planning to mobilize the means required to implement this agenda through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development based on a spirit of strengthened global solidarity, focusing in particular on the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, and with the participation of all countries, all stakeholders, and all people. You see, they're not really giving us a choice about this. This website here that I will link to, and I'm looking at now, has a list of 91 things, including a huge list of goals associated with several tenets of society. And again, please read through it on your own, because you will find many, many things as you read through all of this, things that will concern you, things that will trouble you. And I'm going to point out just a few things here. In their declaration section, one of the things that they mention is number 5, where it says, this is an agenda of unprecedented scope and significance. It is accepted by all countries and is applicable to all, taking into account different national realities, capacities, and levels of development, and respecting national policies and priorities. These are universal goals and targets which involve the entire world, developed and developing countries alike. They are integrated and indivisible and balance the 3 dimensions of sustainable development. So, again, it sounds really pleasing, doesn't it? They want to develop the entire world to create this social order, a utopia, a balance, indivisible between the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, which are the economic, social, and environmental. Now, think about this. Economic. They're trying to create a single world economy, or at least a system that is singular in nature, where they're not separated by nation states. Social order. They're trying to create a single social order and a single environmental order. And I think with the environmental, that includes the technological aspect of it, raising technology in harmony with nature. And this is where topics like transhumanism enter the picture. And actually, transhumanism and the technological development affects all 3, the economic, social, and environmental. And that's why so many people have speculated that the mark of the beast system will be a microchip. Now, it doesn't have to be a microchip. It can be something else entirely. It can be a basic mark that shows your allegiance to the system. But it's very interesting that these are the things that are talked about. Another one that I want to point out here on the list is number 17. It's under Our World Today. Here's what it says. In its scope, however, the framework we are announcing today goes far beyond the MDG, which is the Millennium Development Goals. Alongside continuing development priorities such as poverty eradication, health, education, and food security and nutrition, it sets out a wide range of economic, social, and environmental objectives. It also promises more peaceful and inclusive societies. Now, how are they going to do this? How are they going to enforce this? That's the question. It also, crucially, defines means of implementation. Guess what? The UN gets to define how this is implemented, and they're not clear on how they're going to do this. Reflecting the integrated approach that we have decided on, there are deep interconnections and many cross-cutting elements across the new goals and targets. So it's pretty clear here. The elite of the world through this United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development are basically declaring themselves the rulers of the planet. I mean, think about that. Now, let me skip back to number 10 in conjunction to this. As one of their shared principles, here's what they say. The new agenda is guided by the purpose and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, including full respect for international law. It is grounded in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Treaties, the Millennium Declaration, and the 2005 World Summit Outcome Document. It is informed by other instruments such as the Declaration on the Right to Development. So again, this agenda is going to supersede the Constitution, at least here in the United States. And that's been happening for a while again, but this is it. We're going to start seeing the total breakdown, more so, at least in the United States. Every nation that signs up is going to be part of this agenda. And so what happens to those nations that choose not to? That's a question that I have. And if you look at one of the goals, which is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, in 1.4, it says that by 2030, ensure that all men and women, in particular the poor and the vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to basic services, ownership and control over land and other forms of property, inheritance, natural resources, appropriate new technology, and financial services, including microfinance. Now, again, will this really happen? I don't know. And it sounds good. Yeah, we want our own ownership and control over our land and, our own property, and we want our own inheritance and have access to our own natural resources. But what happens if you don't comply with the UN in how to do that, or under what conditions we do that? That's the question. That's the big question here. And what does it mean to create appropriate new technology and financial services? Technology that is controlled by who? For what purpose? All very important questions that I don't think we're going to have much say in, because these elite and these rulers of the UN are going to decide for us. Same thing with ending hunger. They want to 2.A, increase investment, including through enhanced international cooperation in rural infrastructure, agricultural research and extension services, technology development, and plant and livestock gene banks in order to enhance agricultural productive capacity in developing countries, in particular, least developed countries. Again, technology development and plant and livestock gene banks. Very interesting. And then education, inclusive and equitable quality education, and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. 4B, by 2020, sustainably expand globally the number of scholarships available to developing countries, in particular least developed countries, small island developed states, and African countries, for enrollment in higher education, including vocational training and information and communications technology. Why would they want to push that higher education and focus on information and communication technology? That's interesting. Technical, engineering, and scientific programs in developed countries and other developing countries. So, again, I can go on and on here. There's a lot of things in here that will jump out at you, and at first will sound like, oh, that sounds wonderful, but then you kind of think about it and you go, wait a minute, how are they going to implement this? What sorts of rules and sorts of demand are they going to have, and what happens to those who don't comply? What if they do something that you think is morally misaligned with what you believe? And now that the Pope is behind it, there's a means here to create a one world religious system, and the Pope definitely gave its blessing to this whole agenda. That's why he came. Now, let me make this last point here under technology. 17.6, enhance north to south, south to south, and triangular regional and international cooperation on and access to science, technology, and innovation, and enhance knowledge sharing on mutually agreed terms, including through improved coordination among existing mechanisms, in particular at the United Nations level, and through a global technology facilitation mechanism. A global technology facilitation mechanism. The United Nations wants to create the virtual panopticon. In essence, they want to control the technology. They want to control the facilitation of that technology and the mechanisms that are involved in it. And how are they going to do this? Through sharing on mutually agreed terms. Mutually between who?